Right now, Sarah Lazarovic joins me in Studio Q.
Hi,
Hey.
thank you. Hi, thank you for having me.
How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for calling my book handsome.
It certainly is. I want to say congratulations on it. It's really not just handsome on the outside, it's beautifully illustrated, it's very thoughtful. And I understand this grew out of your experiment where you went without buying clothes or shoes for a year. Tell me about the decision to do that.
Sure. And first, I should say that I am by no means the first person to do this, and that is but one chapter in the book. But I totally understand that it is the most salient chapter because everyone loves the story of the girl who stopped shopping and what can she tell us about not shopping. So, why did I not shop? I'd done it once in 2006, and at that time it was because I worked here actually at the CBC, and I was waltzing my way home, and I'd often find myself buying stuff just happening in on the stores on Queen West and coming out with a thing I didn't need. And then I'd largely stopped. And then around 2011, I realized I didn't shop anymore, I thought, because I was home all the time working in my studio. And I thought, then how do I have all this new stuff? And why are things always arriving on my doorstep? And I realized I had an internet shopping problem. I was buying almost exclusively online, but I was still buying stuff, and I would be mindlessly working away. Mindlessly? I'd be working away, but then I'd mindlessly segue over to some random blog and find myself buying crap I didn't need, and I wanted to stop that. So in 2012, I did my shopping diet again, mostly to curb my internet impulses.
When you mentioned something there is that you're surprised that it caused so much of a ruckus, that a girl didn't buy clothes for a year. You were even on the Today Show about this.
Yes, I was.
It seems like the mainstream media reaction to what you're doing was such an absolute shock. How surprised were you by the reaction?
I guess I'm surprised and not surprised because I work in the media, so I understand the story. But people do this all the time, and every year somebody does some sort of, diet of some kind, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, she didn't shop. How did she do that?" But I think people almost respond to that story because they're supposed to respond to it, and they're supposed to think it's shocking. But when they actually think about not shopping, it's not that hard. And if they actually did it, tried to do it, it would be no problem for most people. I mean, I don't want to put words in other people's mouths, but I think it's one of those things that sounds much more difficult than it is. Like, I couldn't go a year without sugar, like some people do. For me, that would be impossible. But a year without buying new clothes, like, at a certain point in our lives, we all have enough. And not buying a couple new dresses or a couple new pair of shoes is actually not that difficult.
But even socially, why do you think, North America in general, why do you think there was this adverse reaction to what you were doing?
Adverse? I think it's generally positive. It's more like I got no hostility.
There was definitely surprise. There was definitely a shock. Like I said, how could someone do this?
Well, it's because it's considered such a ridiculously cliched part of our culture. Like this talk of retail therapy. Very smart people will drop the phrase retail therapy all the time as if it's something great to go do. And I don't actually think most people find therapy in retail, like going out and shopping. It's kind of tedious. I enjoy shopping sometimes when the environment is right. I'm out with some friends and having a drink and, just not making too much of it. But I think we just have this we place this weird undue importance on shopping as if it's this thing that is so necessary to our modern capitalist lifestyle. And I'm by no means like an anti-capitalist. We must all stop shopping and wear, burlap sacks. But at the same time, it's just like, it's not that fundamental to our lives and our happiness.
It's funny you mentioned that you were in your studio and you were you didn't think you were buying anything, but it turns out you were just doing a lot of online shopping. I found myself a little while ago. I ended up buying a 12-pack of Altoids for no apparent reason. I don't
like a 12 of 12, like a gross of Altoids, or
12 tins of Altoids.
Okay.
For no reason.
I guess you're a radio guy. There might be some reason, like you're talking to guests all day. You want to have fresh breath. I don't know.
I had never had Altoids before.
Oh.
And I think there's a whole new danger around online shopping. How has online shopping changed the way we buy?
Well, I think that is actually quite a good example because the thing is, people always talk about when they run with the stories on Today's Show or on the Daily Mail, they're like, how much money did she save? And the thing is, it's by not shopping. And the thing is, on the internet, it's because I think we get confused and we think it's all about the expensiveness of things and not buying expensive things on the internet and doing damage to our pocketbooks. But the problem is everything is so cheap. So like I find these days, if you're on the internet, you're like, oh, I save so much if I buy 12 of these. And if I just buy one more, then I get the free $50 shipping. And, unless you're in, extreme financial straits, often the amount of money you're talking about is pretty negligible. So you're not even thinking about the money aspect of it. So you're just thinking, oh, this is a good deal. I'll buy these Altoids and it's not going to you're not going to get a bill 5 days later and be like, oh my God, I spent $300 on Altoids. You're going to just be like, whatever, I spent, I don't know how much 12 Altoids cost.
It cost $7. That's the reason I got it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So I think
it was cheap.
It's drips and drabs. So the thing is, you keep buying a little thing here, a little thing there, because largely internet retailers have done away with the shipping costs. So, I mean, you imagine something, you find it on the internet within seconds, and this thing has arrived from Amazon via drone, landed on your doorstep within 5 seconds, and you haven't even had time to like think about it, and much less factor in the cost or whether you needed that item. Did I answer your question?
You certainly
I can't
did.
remember what you asked me.
Did you feel withdrawal when you decided to stop buying clothes?
I didn't feel withdrawal from buying clothes. I felt withdrawal from spending time leisurely window shopping on the internet. Because what I would do when I wanted a break, and I think it was just a thing I wanted to break up, had I been working on an illustration or a writing assignment for a couple hours and I wanted a break, I would go read a blog I liked, some mom blogger or lady blogger who had cool fashion, and I would, be reading her blog and she would link to something, and then I would go browse on the site that she was raving about, and that sort of mindless, lazy, taking a break, taking a respite from whatever I was doing, I missed that because if I kept letting myself do that, then I would want to buy stuff, so I had to say, like, don't go read the lady blogger who is always posting pictures of herself in cute outfits from Anthropology, because then I'm just going to want that stuff. So I miss that kind of like...
Stay off of Instagram, you also said.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Instagram is just like a device for making you want things.
And instead of shopping, you are a visual artist, and if you haven't seen the book, you painted the items that you were drawn to instead of actually purchasing them. Well, why did you do that?
I like gimmicky projects. No, I just like fun little... For me, it was just this idea because the number one reason why people shop, we shop too impulsively. And so you want to impose time as a metric. You want to add time to the equation so that you don't shop so much and so that you actually step back from the instant impulse purchase of like, had you probably taken 2 more minutes to say, do I need these Altoids?
I did not.
That's
I ended up giving most of them away.
That's the thing. No, but I mean, in the moment when you're purchasing, you're like, oh, a tin of Altoids, buy. And had you taken the time to maybe like draw a picture of the Altoids or write down, I'm about to buy some Altoids, anything to sort of impose that idea of time would maybe make it would maybe make you step back and think a little more rationally about whether you wanted the Altoids or not. And for me, painting is a way of doing that because it creates time. And while staring adoringly at the Anthropology dress, I sort of get over my desire to own it. I sort of realize, oh, I have another dress like that. And I also think a huge problem is that we all feel guilt because everyone thinks that there's something wrong with them for being so seduced by all these beautiful things out there in the marketplace. And I mean, that's kind of ridiculous because marketers and business people spend billions of dollars and loads of energy and lots of time and energy making beautiful things for us to like. So it's a hard thing to embrace the fact that it's okay to like all the beautiful things that are thrown at you, and you shouldn't feel guilty or like you're a weak person or a gross person for liking things that people present to you because they're trying to sell you something. So it's okay to say, like, these shoes are beautiful, and I'm still not going to buy them.
And this is something you're recommending for all people to do, to try and draw or write or at least try to channel that desire in a more creative way before buying.
Well, I don't think everyone has to do silly art projects like me. For me, that was just a way for me to process it. And I think just for anybody, I mean, if you want to, that's great. But anything you can do that, Hoda on the Today Show said, take a picture of it, which I actually thought was a really good idea. Take a picture of the item and then leave the store, go think about it for a little while. We're so caught up in the pace of things. Like, I don't think we used to buy quite as quickly as we do now because we're worried that the fast fashion item that we saw will not be hanging on the store the next day or, act now or you'll lose this offer forever. And I think if you just take a little time.
What is the danger of buying it right away, buying it as soon as you want it?
Well, I think the danger is that we all have way too much stuff, and there's this increasing feeling. I mean, maybe it's anecdotal and it's my peer group, but there is a general feeling of stuff fatigue. Like, we all just have too much stuff. We don't need anything else. It's not going to make us happier. We're going to feel guilty when we buy it. It's not sustainable in any way. We're just drowning ourselves in crap we don't need and spending money we don't have. And yeah, I mean, there's not always a danger. Sometimes you really know. Sometimes when you've really thought out what you need and want in life. Like, you knew you needed a pair of new winter boots. Mm-hmm. So you've been thinking long and hard about that. So maybe when you see the right pair, it's okay to snap it up because it's something you've actually, expended some mental energy towards. You've been thinking about exactly what kind of pair you want to buy. But oftentimes it's not that. It's the system one thinking, which means in very simple terms, your emotional, impulsive, immediate response to something, and often that later leads to recrimination and self-recrimination and sadness that you bought the wrong thing and shopper's guilt. So I don't know, just by and large, if you take a little bit of time, I think you're often much happier with your purchases and you don't buy as much crap.
I think what's wonderful about this is that the listener has now gotten a window into my shopping experiences, which would consist of winter boots and Altoids. Sarah, this is a book that questions the impulse to buy things. At the same time, again, I describe the book as handsome. It's very attractive. It's a very covetable item. Did you feel conflicted at all creating such a pretty book that someone may find it hard to resist buying?
Yes, that's the ultimate quandary of trying to sell a book about not buying things. And, you can get it at the library, but I'm sure my publishers are not happy if I say that.
How did you deal with that quandary?
I mean, I just try to think about it. I address it in one page in the book, and you've read it, so I won't go.
But not everyone has. Please
of course,
talk
not everyone
about
has my book. But just this idea that we have to make choices about. We always give artistic things a free pass, and my book certainly shouldn't get a free pass just because people say, "Oh, it's okay, you don't buy clothes, but you buy lots of books and music, and these are the things that make life worth living." One hopes buying, beautiful cultural products that hopefully we derive some pleasure from, but at the same time, a book does kill trees. So, I hope that if people do buy my book, that's why it's really small and compact, and it's the kind of thing that I hope they want to keep and sort of linger over the pages and pass on to friends, and there's even a spot to write things in it and save and treasure, but at the same time, if they get it from the library, I'm totally fine with that.
And I should say, you're not totally anti-shopping. You're not anti-fashion. You describe how important clothes have been to you in terms of communicating something about yourself to the world in a visual way. And I think that's one of the most beautiful parts of the book, is you describe the emotional attachment you had to these clothes, especially when you were much younger. Can you talk a little bit about the kinds of things you were trying to get through about yourself through your clothing?
Well, I think clothing is a huge part of identity formation, and our clothes are obviously what we present to the world each day. So when people write off any concern for fashion as being superfluous or superficial, I think there's an element of just judginess in there, because who among us doesn't need a little bit of an armor when we go out into the world? And people do make judgments all the time. And gosh, if you saw that, it's really silly, but also amazing. The guy who wore the same suit for a year in Australia, I've been thinking about that so much. It's just a simple, silly little thing, but like women especially, we have to care about what we wear. I was talking about it to a colleague at U of T, and she was saying on her evaluations, her students actually, with no shame, write critiques of her outfits every day when they turn in there.
Really?
When they turn in, yeah. So I mean, to completely write off any concern for caring about what we look in the world is ridiculous, and it's just finding the right balance and knowing how much time to spend, how much money to spend, and how much of our energy to allocate towards what we present to the world and how we dress.
You've given so much thought to this. You've put so much thought, and you've made so many people consider their appearance and the way they dress. But I want to know, are you still affected by the scrutiny? Do you still feel the scrutiny about the way to dress?
Honestly, I don't think I'm like above any sort of what's the word I'm looking for? I should start this again. I do care about my appearance, but I don't know. Once you hit a certain point of age, you just don't care as much. And I think that's a great thing.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that I'm like the 80-year-old lady, wearing whatever the heck I want. And I think I'm on my way because I just don't care. But I understand that people do. And I have a child, and I know she's going to go through all those things. She already is. She really cares about what she puts on in the morning, and she's 4. So these are things, you can't shield your children from, and they're just a part of life and identity formation. So I understand that, I forgot your question.
But is that dangerous for a child to be 4 years old and still caring about what they're wearing, or is it just human nature?
I don't know. I'm not a psychologist.
Right.
I think it's just human nature, to think about what you're putting on your body every day. You do have to wear it all day, like not to an extreme extent, but just something comfortable, something fun, something that twirls.
You do say that your clothing was most important to you when you were a teenager. Do you think just as humans we are able to relax a bit more about what we wear as we get older?
I mean, I think so.
Yeah.
My favorite thing is sort of like looking at people on the street and they found their style in 1972 and they haven't looked back. The people who just this works for me and I'm going to stick with it. Like, that's amazing. Just you wear those polyester pants and just keep going with that. And I think there is and as you get older, you also know what works for you. You're trying things out. You're trying on different personas, different characters, and you don't know who you are when you're 12. So yeah, you might want to try a whole bunch of different things and figure out if you're the person who wants to be normcore, or if you're the person who wants to wear a crazy wild dress every day. So it's all just part of a process, and yeah.
My father had this pair of aviator glasses that he bought in 1971, and he
Amazing.
wore them. He wore them when they were cool in the 70s, and uncool in the 80s, and cool again in the 90s, and then uncool in the 2000s, and they were all the same aviator glasses.
Disagree. He was always cool.
He was always cool. I like to think that too. One of the best parts of the entire book for me is at the end of the book. Now, I don't mean to say the best part of the book was the end, but there was this series of shopping rules you try to follow. What are some of the most important things you've learned from doing this project?
Well, I guess I would say number one, as already said, is time. The second one is kind of silly, but like we have so much stuff. We live in this era of plenty, and we all have way too many clothes and way too small a closet to contain them. And I think people don't even realize how much stuff they have. And they end up going and buying things that, like, once they do know what kind of style they are, we tend to gravitate towards the same things. So oftentimes, just think about what you already have that works and don't go buy some variation thereupon. Just work with what you already have because it's close enough. Like, you don't need 30 variations on the black sweater. You need one, you know? And so I think that's a good rule because often, and also, like, we live in a seasonal country. Like, you put stuff away and you forget. My husband actually forgot that he already had a fall coat. I think I told this to your producer. Like, so he was like, oh, I don't have a good coat. You know, I'm going to be cold. It's right before winter set in. And then I remembered that, no, we tackled this. Like, he'd been needing a fall coat for years. I was like, you got one last spring and it's in the basement. And we just forgotten. Like, everyone's busy. So be mindful of what you have. What's my other good tip?
You do have a formula at one point, do you? Don't you?
Oh, it's a joke, but it's also true. I mean, I just think there's a lot made of like people, women especially. Well, men too, not just women especially.
Sure.
Men as well. Everyone likes to amortize the cost of something. They're like, oh, if I spend X amount of dollars on this, but I use it every single day, then it's absolutely worth it.
Yeah.
And there's some truth to that, but there's also some rationalizing going on, right? Like, it's okay if I spend $2,000 on this coat because I'm going to wear it every day for 4 years, and I'm horrible at math, so that's like $1.78 per wear. That's not the right equation. I just made that up. But you know what I mean? We do this rationalizing, and at the same time, I think that is good because also sometimes you should say, you know, don't buy a crappy IKEA couch. See if you can, not that all IKEA couches are crappy. I think I have one. Don't buy whatever, the crappy variation of something you want when you know if you just spend a little more to get the thing that's going to last much, much, much longer, you know, in the long term, it's going to cost you 2 cents more per sit, you know, so go for that.
Sarah Lazarovic, thanks for coming in today.
Thank you so much for having me.